I think when you're transitioning from being a people pleaser into someone with more boundaries, it can feel so weird. It's hard to tell if you're being mean or if you're actually just respecting your own feelings because you're so used to putting other people's feelings first. And this was posted on Instagram by Synchronistic. Hello everybody and welcome to today's episode of the Toy Talks podcast. Woo! I'm calling this episode It Is Not Always Paramount. I apologise if I'm tripping over my words. I'm extremely exhausted. I'm tired, girl. And I'm a chronic low iron babe. I'm a first time mum. And I'm acclimatising to what is now my new normal with the most amazing child. And I conceived at 37, became a mother at 38. And honestly, I can sit here and say that I've learned so many new things about myself that I didn't know before, number one. Number two, I had low tolerance for tomfoolery and the BS, but now my tolerance level is even slimmer because time is always of the essence with me. Like, I'm always running around doing something, honey. So I don't have the time to waste on low vibration relationships, employers that are in it to just completely waste my time, and just anything that doesn't serve my main purpose and the goals that I have in my life. Some people could turn around and say, well, that's a selfish way to look at life. But I feel like when you give and you continue to sow into the world and into people, it's okay to have a balance of selfishness, which means that sometimes it's okay to focus on your own needs. The opening quote was about being a people pleaser, and I will definitely say that in my 20s, I was a chronic people pleaser. And I know that it came from the dysfunctional relationship I had with my mum, so I was always wanting to be accepted. This is the reason why I went through so many friends in my 20s, trying to find this kind of, you know, the what's the word? The pedestal of friendships, and looking for people who had an understanding of friendship the way I did, or relationships like I did. So you're never going to find that because people are raised differently, backgrounds, there's things that trigger people to do different things, and everybody is different. People are individuals. I think when I made the decision that I was no longer going to be a people pleaser, I think it was around the time when my father died. And I looked around, and suddenly, for somebody who knew quite a lot of people, I didn't have a lot of friends. In fact, I'll go on record to say I probably had 2 people in my life at the time that really supported me through the hardest period of my life. And at that point, I decided that being a people pleaser doesn't please me, it pleased the people. And when I need those people to return the favour, to be there for me, because I've people pleased for so long, I didn't have that. But I realised I did not place any value on myself because I was so willing to people please and so willing to put myself out there for people for no return. Therefore, people didn't value my friendship, and they didn't value my need to have people around me when I was on the floor. And there's nothing more humbling than seeing you put yourself out there for people, be on your knees, and nobody is there. And you look around, it's really humbling because it makes you realise that all those people that are in your call register that you had spoken to maybe a day or two before, actually, when you categorise what friendships are and who your friends are, sometimes you could turn up with less of a number, or even a smaller number than you ever would conceive. And it's not the quantity of friends, it is the quality of the people around you. And I've had to learn that the hard way. It's funny how different milestones in your life and different things that happen in your life bring out people and bring out the selflessness in people. And I've had a few come to Jesus moments over the last few months that are really, have really shocked me, but also feeds into the transitional period of my life. I think when you hit different milestones, when you graduate, when you have a child, get married, get engaged, meet somebody, people will either celebrate you and be happy for you, or some people will not be happy for your happiness, or some people want you to be happy, not happier than them, and some people are just jealous. And I think sometimes it's important to know when we're going through transitional periods of our life, so that we know what to observe and also how to discern, but more importantly, how to focus our expectations during a period of transition. And transitions can be good, bad. What are transitions? It's change. That's what transition means. It's change. It's how you are changing or moving forward or moving into another space or chapter in your life. And sometimes people do come into your life for a reason, a season, and a lifetime. And it's okay. That's not a bad thing. I read all these quotes on social media where it talks about how somebody who doesn't have the same friendship groups or have a friend who they've known since they were young, that person's problematic. Well, I'll put it to you that some people are not meant to go on every single stage and journey of your life. And if you do have people like that, it is a blessing and it is amazing. But don't discredit people like myself who maybe don't have friends that they've known for 20, 30 years. However, the friends that I do have and I haven't known for like 20 years, I feel as though the relationship has stood the test of time and stood the adversities. And I think those are the quality friends. I always say to people, you do not know who your friends are until your friendship has been tested. And it's the truth. So whether you've known someone to 10, 15 years, or whether you've known somebody for 2 years, it's the quality of that person's character and how that friendship has developed over time, or relationship for that matter. I think it's easy to, as people who are selfless empaths, to discredit how you feel to accommodate other people. And this is where you have to set boundaries for yourself and understand that you are deserving of love. You are deserving of all that is good. And being uncomfortable is not testament to being a good person or being a good friend or being a good sister or a good cousin. You don't have to be uncomfortable to be able to prove that. What you have to be able to do is look yourself in the mirror and be happy with the reflection, be happy with what looks back at you, and be happy with how you are as a person. When you sit alone, are you able to feel comfortable in your own skin and in the decisions that you have made in your life? I always say that it's always important to, look at people in the industry, in different industries, or just people who you share an affiliation with or who you admire, and see how they've lived their lives and the things that they've said. I have shared on this podcast, I really admire Michael Jordan. He is like, I love him. I think he's amazing. And I love his fortitude, his conviction, and his determination in his career. And that's why I hold Michael Jordan in high esteem for the decisions and the drive that he's had to achieve the empire that he has created. I also admire 50 Cent, and I've shared that. I've got an episode about 50 Cent and some of the things that I've learned from him. And I have seen in the media where he threw his microphone and it did injure a young lady and she was hospitalised. And it was while he was on stage rapping. And I think something that I've always been confused about with 50 Cent is he is a businessman, he is a mogul. And I understand that the rap game set him up to be able to do all the things that he's doing now. But whenever I look at him and rap and everything that has flowed from that, aside from the positive stuff, I never see anything positive in him keep going back. It's almost like if you're going to commit to another chapter of your life as a businessman, you have to be able to sidestep from the rap game, which started off as survival, it started off as whatever it was. And he has developed techniques to be able to avoid certain things so he can stay level-headed, like alcohol, for example. So to see him on stage and lose his cool the way he did and throw that microphone and basically assault somebody in an audience and potentially could have harmed others, it is quite confusing. And I need him to speak on it, because on one hand, you're a business mogul. On one hand, you speak about, being true to yourself. And I'm sorry about the screaming. Kids are on summer holidays and I've got the window open because it's boiling, and I refuse to close this window because it's too hot, and if I put the fan on you'll be able to hear it, so we're just going to deal with the echoing and the sound. Anyway, so with 50 Cent, I just don't understand how he doesn't create enough boundaries for himself. Do you know what I'm saying? It's almost like when you leave a job, yeah, and you go on to another role, and there's all dramas in your old job, you're not going back, or you shouldn't be going back anyway, to your to get-togethers in your old workplace to get involved in the passa. You're moving on. You've left that chapter of your life. You may stay friendly with a couple of people, but you're not inserting yourself back into your old life, into your old employment. You're moving forward, and that's kind of how I look at it with 50 Cent. It's like, why are you going back? Do you really? Maybe it's the money. Maybe 50 Cent now, because I know the resurgence of the 90s and stuff. I get all of that, or the 2000s. I get that, but if it continues to bring out the worst in him, I don't know why he keeps going back, if that makes sense. And I think that he needs to have more conviction in his ability to be a producer, to be a businessman, and continue with that. That's the side of 50 Cent where I admire him so much, because the way he speaks on his transition into that aspect of his life as a producer, as a writer, I admire that. I admire his ability to pivot. I admire his ability to become a businessman. So it was almost from a rap star to a businessman. And I had almost forgotten that he did rap, or that he was 50 Cent, as in 50 Cent the rapper. Especially like today, I was watching Tommy, the Power Book Tommy, the next one. And I'm just in awe of the whole trilogy, the whole Ghost, Power. I'm just in awe of it. He created that and has created so many more shows outside of Power, and his relationship with Stars and Lionsgate and all that stuff has served me to be able to understand how to navigate business. So it is quite disappointing that he's found himself in a situation where he's throwing. I just don't understand. So, and 50 Cent's got such a big mouth. I'm waiting for him to speak on it. Maybe his lawyers have told him not to say anything. I don't know. But this is what I mean about your personal brand. You don't have to be a celebrity, an influencer, an actor, whatever, to have a personal brand. Your personal brand is also the person who shows up to work. I know what my personal brand is. My personal brand is work Toya is, I'm focused on the delivery. I know how to strategically navigate the world of work. I'm not trying to be too pally with anyone. I am kind, I'm cordial, I'm professional. But there is a professional line I refuse to have crossed or be crossed, yeah? And I deliver. And when I deliver, I'm done. And even more so that now I'm a mum, I don't have time to be the people pleaser I used to be in the workplace, whereby I used to work until sometimes 10, 11 o'clock at night, and then show up to work the next day at 8. I'm not that person anymore. And that used to be me, because I used to think that if I burn the candle at both ends, if I work myself into an illness, people know I work hard and I'll get the respect of my colleagues. And I've realised that is not it. I have to respect myself, and people will choose whether to respect me or not. But what will be respected, and I won't compromise on it, is my personal boundaries. And that is my brand. My ability to just be good at my job and deliver, but not allow people to obstruct my boundaries or disrespect those boundaries. I don't give a shit what happens in your life. I couldn't care less if your cat has a fur ball in its mouth. I don't care if you've got chronic diarrhea. I really don't care if you suffer from vaginal discharge. I don't care if your husband left you for the neighbour. I don't give a damn if you suffer from adult acne. I don't give a shit. I just want to come into work. I will play the strategic game and I want to leave. I'm not going to do a Christmas party. I don't care about your after work events. I really learnt from COVID, and I understand the importance of also maintaining my personal brand, because if you do not maintain it, people will not respect it, because you are not maintaining what you are putting out there. And these are all the things I also learned from 50 Cent about your personal brand, irrespective of what you do for a living, your industry. It's about you as a person and how you set yourself up in whatever you do in your life and the decisions that you make. So, yeah, 50 Cent, we're waiting on the explanation, innit? So, some of you may have heard of Tyler Perry. And to me, Tyler Perry has always been a bit of is the word enigma? I've never really quite understood the Tyler Perry brand. I just know that he produced and often acted in some really badly acted shows where people were wearing really bad weaves and just acting in what I just couldn't understand, that whole thing. I just didn't get the brand. I didn't really understand it. But what I did is I respected his personal brand, because more than anything else, he was doing what he loved and what he believed in. I think to really understand Tyler Perry, and the reason I'm talking about Tyler Perry is obviously he made a bid to buy BET, which is owned by Paramount. And what makes that even more amazing is BET has always been, for me, a very black network, producing very African American shows, black led shows. So the fact that Tyler Perry was making a bid, I really admired it, and I wanted to understand a bit more. So Tyler Perry is effectively a director, he's an actor, producer, and a writer. His whole Medea franchise, because that whole Medea thing, I never understood it. And the bad wigs, the bad acting, but that entire franchise has grossed up to $660 million. So you can already see that if you're a director, actor, producer, and a writer, and he owns all the rights, his wealth has actually come from producing, that's and being a producer. And it dates back to the 1990s, and he owns 100% of all the content he has created. You see, that is what underpins his brand. It's the fact that he owns all of his content. So in 2019, he opened Tyler Perry Studios, which is across 330 acres of property. I think it's 330,000 acres, something like that anyway, but it is unbelievable, the fact that he has managed to produce a studio. So you imagine now, he's not just a director, actor, producer, and a writer, and owned his entire content. He now has a studio called Tyler Perry Studios. So effectively, he's self-sufficient. He's not relying on any of these brands or any of these companies to rent out space to be able to record or do what he does. He has also created content for OWN Network, which is owned by Oprah Winfrey. Over the last 7 years, he did a partnership with them, and so he created a lot of content for them. But in 2019, he did a deal with Viacom, and that deal basically allowed him, and he worked hard for, by the way, to own 25% of the streaming service, which is obviously BET. So he already owns 25% of BET through a deal that he did with Viacom. So now, when Paramount Global basically announced that, they were, effectively selling BET, they obviously were open to bids, and they wanted a bid from Tyler Perry. So Tyler Perry bid about $2 billion, and I think there were other people that were interested, and Paramount Global actually rejected other people's bids, but wanted Tyler Perry to increase his bid to $3 billion, and Tyler Perry said no. Now, bearing in mind, Tyler Perry is a billionaire. He can afford $3 billion. He can afford it, but he was only offering $2 billion. Paramount Global pushed and pushed and pushed. He said no. So they actually formally rejected his bid to own 100% of BET, because he would not increase by an extra billion, and therefore have a bid of $3 billion. I found it really interesting, and I found it really interesting because, number one, Tyler Perry could afford it. That's like a drop in the ocean for him, okay? An expensive ocean, a very large ocean, but still a drop in the ocean for him. And when I started to read and just really try to understand, like, how's this come about? Why did he? Because to own the whole of BET is huge. That's massive. That means now he could effectively have people produce for him and create whatever he wants to create for BET, or have the programs that are already on BET and then start to own part of that content. He's adding to his empire. Why would he reject it? Why would he not? Why would he walk away and not add an extra billion? And then I thought, hang on a minute. Paramount Global are very cheeky, because this is what some businesses do. They also want to know the value of a company or value of a business, that they will say, right, we're selling, to see how much it would be worth on the open market, and then reject all the bids and say, oh, no, we're not doing this anymore, just so they could see how much a business is worth and determine whether it's lucrative enough for them to sell. Now, they may think that they are winning here or that they're smart, but they're not, because what they've done is they've actually rejected a bid from a billionaire who is the mover of and shaker of the black industry in America, the black media industry. And actually, I think they've reduced their value, because I feel like BET needs a saviour, because ain't no one checking for BET much anymore, honey. Absolutely not. There are so many other networks that are huge, and it wouldn't surprise me if Paramount Global put BET back on the market and Tyler Perry not bid at all. That wouldn't surprise me. But then when I was thinking about Tyler Perry and his personal brand, his ability to walk away and accept that he was going to be rejected actually aligns with his personal brand. He knows his worth. We're talking about a billionaire here that bought acres of land to create Tyler Perry Studios, where people are creating in his studios. Some creators, he owns some of the rights to what they're producing. So for him, the way he probably looked at it is, well, I'm all of these things. I've got a Tyler Perry Studio. It'll be great to own a network and add to my empire. But we have to also respect people's personal brand and their ability to understand their worth enough to walk away. He knows he's not a chump. His lawyers and accountants have done have valued it and have not valued it more than 2 million. And I think the learning lesson is, how do you value yourself, and what are you willing to walk away from? Do you know your value enough to understand that there are some people out there that want to devalue you, or are happy for you to devalue yourself so that they can gain? In the world of work, I think a lot of us place value on that promotion. We place value on that pay rise, and we place value on some form of recognition. And recognition also comes from a pay rise, a promotion. It comes from being mentioned in a newsletter, or an all hands, what they call an all hands, whereby all people from the organisation are in a group meeting and your name is mentioned. Some people want that validation. But your worth should not be determined by your organisation. You get to determine your worth by setting high enough boundaries that if an organisation is no longer meeting the expectations of your personal brand, you're able to know that you can walk away. I feel like some people are so terrified to walk away, they diminish their personal brand by diminishing their boundaries and accepting bullshit. And then when it gets too late, then you realise, oh my God, what have I done? And at that point, you're so heavily invested in your organisation, your self-esteem has been depleted. You no longer have an identity in your organisation that is individualistic and selfish. Because in organisations, you've got to be a little bit selfish. Some people lose themselves so much. So the ability to walk away is not even an option. I talk about all the time, not being offered what you're worth and knowing your walk away point. I definitely feel as though when I created the Toy Talks podcast and the platform, it was from a space of, yes, creating a safe space, but also being strategic, navigating the world of work, but also knowing your worth. Because as black women, I genuinely think that we don't know what our worth is, because we can't keep undervaluing ourselves and saying that, oh, we believe we're queens. Some of us actually do not believe we're queens. I know I'm a queen, honey, because I have to believe in myself enough to know my worth, because society are so easily and ready to beat me down, and so willing to tell me no, and so willing to tell me I'm not good enough. The fact that you could go into an interview, and I have been in an interview whereby what is advertised in a job and what I'm being interviewed for are two different things, and then I call you out on it and you seem to think that I should accept it because I'm looking for a job. You must be out of your mind. How many of us have seen a role advertised for a certain amount of money, and then when you get the job offer, it doesn't match up, and suddenly that job description or the advertised role is no longer on the website or no longer advertised, so you can't even. You need to be able to understand the value of your personal brand, and the value starts from the moment that you engage with an employer. When you have a CV, your CV is your personal brand. You're basically telling the audience all your experience, what you've delivered, the knowledge you've acquired, and what you believe are transferable skills, and what you can add that will be essential and that much more of an asset to an organization. That's a personal brand. When you are asked in an interview, what can you bring? This is what I never understand. Like, what can I bring? Well, in my CV, I always refer to in my CV, I reference because my CV is my personal brand. I've taken time to draft that for you, the highlights of my personal brand. And you know, I've had interviews before where I have been told in an interview, oh, you're very confident, like it's a bad thing. If you have to point out in an interview that I'm confident, what you're basically telling me is that you are intimidated by the fact that I know my value. Therefore, I have to ask myself, either I accept the role there, knowing full well that my confidence may be intimidating for you, or I walk away knowing that if you are calling out my confidence, are you calling it out because you're letting me know it's something you're going to beat out of me, or something that you are going to trample all over? Tyler Perry basically rejecting a request to increase his offer was him saying, I know I'm a billionaire, but I know my worth and I know my personal brand. And whilst I may be a billionaire, I'm not a fool. It would be an asset to own 100% of BET, but it is not essential. It's not essential for my brand because my brand stands independent of me acquiring BET. Your brand needs to stand independent of these organizations. There's a level of confidence you have to have in yourself, and you have to maintain, even when it gets hard in an organization. Listen, I applaud people who have been in their job 10, 15 years. I applaud you. But I have learned through COVID, I have learned through experience and the experience of others, that the same loyalty that some of these people are giving organizations, they don't give to themselves, they don't even give to their mental health. I'd like to believe that I've done enough in my career that I'm able to work in an organization, do what I need to do and leave. But you and I know that the reason why you relate to the podcast and the platform is because a lot of my experiences, bad experiences as well, and traumas, you can all relate to because we all have a story to tell. So we are not the problem. The society we live in tells us that we are the problem so that we can change and be more placid. And what I'm going to sit here and say to you is this. To really be successful in the world of work, like to really be successful, I understand there's a level of compromise, but not at the detriment of my mental health, my self-confidence, and my self-esteem. Those are the three things I will not compromise on or play with. Because when you remove that or you play with it, you remove my identity. You effectively play with who I know myself to be. There are so many people I've worked with who have lost themselves in organizations because they're trying to be noticed. They're trying to belong. They want to do well. They don't want to be sacked. They're scared. Especially when you're in a job market like where we are now with the cost of living crisis. And the job market's not great. It's not. So some people think, okay, if I just take these crumbs, it will set me up for my next opportunity. And I'm going to tell you now, if you reduce your personal brand to accept crumbs, you will always have crumbs. You will become a crumble. Yeah, and not the apple crumble, just a crumble. I can't accept crumbs because I'm not a crumble. I can't accept crumbs, no. Because I've worked too hard, and even if I didn't have my experience or my education, I've made enough sacrifices that I shouldn't have to take crumbs. I was approached about a role, and the day rate, I was shocked. I was shocked because it was less than I would have ever accepted in my entire time as a contractor. In fact, my first role as a contractor, I earned more than this particular role. I was shocked. But I said to myself, I want the interview practice. I've told you, I'm very good at interviews because I've practiced enough. But I will keep on because no one knows everything. So the recruiter, lovely guy. I says, what is this day rate? He says, oh, Toya, the market's really bad, this and the other. I said, okay, we'll submit my CV. Some of you are thinking, Toya, why did you do that? I wanted to practice my interview. Do you know, within 24 hours, the recruiter called me and says, oh, they want to interview you. I said, yeah, of course they do. I said, they want me on the cheap. They recognize I've got all the skills, all the experience, but yet they want to give me this day rate. They don't even feel guilty. Oh, that's what they got signed off. No, I said, no, that's not what they got signed. That's what they got signed off because they're unwilling to unlock that cost code and that budget. They're doing cost savings and they're trying to use me as part of their cost saving. He said, well, Toya, they really want to interview you and you're the only candidate that I've put forward. I said, no, I'm the only candidate that agreed for you to put them forward because the rate is so low. He went quiet. He said, so why did you agree for me to put you forward? I said, because I wanted to do the interview. I said, but the fact that they see my skills and they're not even questioning how low the day rate is. I said, even if I was to interview, the likelihood of accepting this role is 0. So he says, so what would make you accept the role? I said, the only way I'll accept this role on that day rate is if, for example, it's outside of IR35. Okay, I can accept that rate outside, but not inside. He went quiet. He said, can I call you back? I said, no problem. He called me. He said, oh, Toya, they can't do it outside, but they really want to interview you. And they basically said that it'll be informal and they can give you a decision on the spot. He said, Toya, the job is as good as yours. I said to the recruiter, I said, you know what? I really like you. Everything you said you're going to do, you did. I said, but if I accept these crumbs, I will always have crumbs and I'll be a crumble. They will expect me to work at my optimal level because they've seen what I've been able to achieve on my CV. They've seen what I've delivered for other organizations. I says, this should be a lesson to them that they cannot expect the best on the cheap. If they need this role filled, they will find the money. Tell them I said. Some of you may think, well, Toya, but you didn't get to do the interview. I didn't. And I wanted to, but only if they would have budged on that day rate. And even if they budged, by an extra £100, I would see flexibility in that. And that would allow me to interview. But they were so inflexible. I thought to myself, let me use this as an opportunity to negotiate then, or to understand the lay of the land, or also to, maybe this is my test to reinforce my boundaries and maintain my personal brand. So I said to the recruiter, I said, moving forward, unless a role is paying this XYZ minimum day rate, please do not call me for the role. Because in calling me, you place me in a situation where I'm going to want to interview. Because I think it's good to interview. But you're also going to place yourself in a position whereby you're putting somebody forward and the likelihood is them rejecting the role because their rate is so low. I said, as a recruiter, part of your job is also to take the client on a recruitment journey. And that journey has to be and has to start from a reasonable day rate. It's disrespectful to come to somebody of my seniority and basically say I should lessen myself to accept this. And what will happen is they will expect you to work really, really hard, but the motivation of money is not there because the rate is so low. I says the fact that nobody will let you take them forward is basically saying to you that as a recruiter, you're not doing enough to take the client to a financial place where they can open themselves up to a wider market of candidates who would be able to deliver this job and do it properly. Let money not be the reason why they don't have a good person that they'll recruit. The recruiter was quiet as hell. And he said, you know what, Toya? I respect that you're not willing to compromise yourself and your experience for this role. Because as it stands at the moment, the rates aren't great. And when I saw your CV, I knew they're going to love you. But the problem was always the rate. And he goes, I feel like I need to do more to bump them up a little bit. He goes, if I bump them up, you know, can I call you? I said, I'm going to be honest with you. My minimum is what they can't afford. Because if this is what they're trying to offer, they can't afford my minimum. He says, what's your minimum? I told him. He goes, can I leave it with him? I said, no problem. It's really hard when the industry is really bad to stay true to your personal brand. It really is hard. But I don't want to be angry every time I get my pay slip. And I don't want to be angry because I know I've sold myself cheap. I feel like I've passed that stage of also being an employee pleaser. Yeah, from a people pleaser to an employee pleaser, I'm past that stage of my life. I have to believe in my source enough that what is for me will never pass me. I have to believe in my source enough that I've done enough in my career that I should get what I'm worth. Or at least, if you can't pay me what I'm worth, pay me what I'm due. I hope that you understood when I'm trying to land here and drum in the need to maintain your personal brand. It's your integrity that we're also talking about here as well. That's what we're also talking about. I feel like the world of work fundamentally never really changes. It goes through peaks and troughs. And we see the industry changing all the time. I've spoke about some of those changes. But when you've got a lot of organizations in the financial sector basically writing to its employees saying, you need to be in the office 3 days a week and we're monitoring your key cards to make sure that you're actually in. These are organizations who once told you they were flexible. These are organizations that were forced into flexibility through lockdown. And as employees, as contractors, we've forgotten the power that we hold. We've forgotten the essence of our personal brands, and we've allowed these employees to move crazy. If employees were more vocal about maintaining their personal brand and more vocal about what they are willing and not willing to accept, some of these organizations have to think carefully before they push their employees too far. It's sad because I feel like the finance industry are the ones that found it the hardest to kind of make that transition to remote working, to trusting employees, to being able to be flexible. And the first opportunity they've had to go back to what they know, they've done that. And it's a difficult one because where do employees now go from there? Because they're not all going to leave their jobs and find a job that's more flexible. But there are people that will, because their personal brand means more to them. Somebody told me recently about a young lady in the finance sector who left an organisation and went to go and work for an international company abroad. And this international company basically said they're going to be flexible, Then they changed their mode of operation and said that everyone has to be in the office 4 days a week. This woman contacted the workplace she left and said, listen, I'm going to put it all on the table for you. This organisation want me in 4 days a week, and I'm unwilling to compromise and do that because I need flexibility in my brand. And flexibility in my brand means that I work either remotely or I'm in the office once a month and I continue to deliver my job. Can I come back? They said yes. And they said yes because she's bloody good at her job. She has a personal brand that is very well respected. And number 3, they found it hard to replace her anyway. So having her come back may have felt embarrassing for her because she did express that. But I actually respect that. And I respect it because, okay, fine. You left and came back and maybe it doesn't sit well with you. But what should sit well with you is your ability to not compromise your personal brand for what you deserve, what you need. And having a work-life balance is one of my personal brands. I can't give myself to work the way I did before. It's impossible. And nobody should be doing that. Nobody. Not in this economy, not in this post-lockdown era. If you didn't learn from lockdown and you've gone back to where you started, there is a problem with your personal brand. It's time for us to really start evaluating what our personal brands are. And if you don't know what it is, develop it. Once you develop what your personal brand is, set some boundaries. Once you've set these boundaries, operate in those boundaries. Understand what you're willing to compromise and what you're not. But more importantly, focus on what makes you happy. Being a people pleaser people pleaser only pleases those who are benefiting from you bending over backwards. But what about you? I have released 2 of those masterclasses that I said that were going to be released, and it's the maternity masterclass and the freelance and contracting masterclasses. I'm so proud of those masterclasses. The maternity masterclass I recorded whilst being on maternity, and I learned so much about how to manage your maternity, what the law says about maternity, what it says about maternity pay, what your entitlements are, what are the obligations and legal obligations and duties that your organisation need to give you when you notify them that you're pregnant. How do you notify them? I provide all the template, all the knowledge, everything that I think that you'll benefit from in the maternity masterclass. The freelance and contracting masterclass are those people who are looking to go freelance and contracting. And one thing I've always said is my podcast, my platform is not for people in the corporate world. It's for the people in the corporate world and for people in the working world. I'm no longer in the corporate world. And there's a lot more industries than you think that can freelance. I talk about one of my friends who's a nurse and is a bank staff. She's a contractor. She contracts her service as bank staff as a nurse. And I talk about also how to set up a limited company. I also explain the intricacies of being inside and outside IR35 and being on maternity, or if you're looking at maternity leave from an inside or outside role, I explain that too. It's really informative and very beneficial. And I'm very proud to say that I had somebody who I'd sent the masterclass over to have a watch and to proof and to give me some feedback. And she has now become a contractor off the back of the contracting and freelance masterclass. That to me is a win. The information is there. The masterclasses are there. Do you believe enough in your personal brand to be able to invest yourself enough to get these masterclasses and build and upskill so that you have a formidable personal brand? I'm going to leave it there. If you want to follow me on social media, I have my personal Instagram account, which is Toya_Washington. I have the Toya Talks podcast Instagram account, which is Toya_Talks. I'm on TikTok, Toya Washington, all one word, and I'm often found on Snapchat. My handle is Toya Washington. If you have a work-related dilemma or a life dilemma that you think that we're able to help you with here on the Toya Talks podcast, you will be anonymous. Your anonymity will be protected. Please email hello@toyatalks.com. Thank you so much for your love and support. Thank you for listening. Let me know what you think. On Spotify, you're able to give feedback on an episode or the things that you learn. Go ahead and communicate. Let me hear what you have learned from this episode. If you want to rate and review, you can rate and review on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts as well. And if you want to send me a DM because you've learned something and you want to share with me what you've learned from this podcast, go ahead and send me a DM on Instagram. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Toya Washington, and you have been listening to the Toya Talks podcast.